We have tons of information to discuss in today's video, including lots of offseason trade speculation. Lots of teams covered in today's video, including the Montreal Canadiens, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Vancouver Canucks, Vegas Golden Knights, Buffalo Sabres, Edmonton Oilers, and the Boston Bruins, plus some big UFA rumors regarding the future of Sam Bennett, currently of the Florida Panthers. Is there a chance he could end up in Toronto? We have some insider information to suggest that it might actually be a chance after all. Plus, we have lots of other news around the league, including the Stanley Cup Final being set. The Oilers eliminated the Dallas Stars last night. We're going to discuss the pulling of Jake Oettinger and the comments from head coach Peter Deboer, whether or not he handled that correctly or if it could impact the relationship with his star goaltender. Plus, we have a new head coach in Seattle, a new hiring in the executive world in the Buffalo Sabres organization, a few signings in Long Island, plus lots of other news around the league, including an update on the status of Claude Giroux re-signing with the Ottawa Senators, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As you can tell by the opener, we have a ton of information to cover in today's video. There's all kinds of very newsworthy day across the NHL. Let's start first with the playoffs. And of course, the Stanley Cup Final rematch is now set. The Florida Panthers will be doing battle with the Edmonton Oilers. So for consecutive nights, we had Game 5s and each conference final. And the Oilers are heading back to play the Florida Panthers for the second consecutive year. Last night's game between Edmonton and Dallas really got off to a crazy start for Edmonton. Edmonton came out flying, and they had 2 goals on their first 2 shots. Then head coach Peter Deboer calls timeout, and it was a kind of a weird scenario. He's kind of laying into his team, telling them to wake up essentially. But then at the end of the timeout, Jake Oettinger starts to go back to the net. And then he yells at him, no, I can't remember exactly, you couldn't tell his exact words, but basically, get the heck off the ice, you're out. And Casey DeSmith is going in, and a lot of people were shocked. I mean, for starters, the 2 goals on 2 shots, in some scenarios, okay, I can see it being justified, but one of them was a backdoor tap-in with no defense anywhere in sight, and I believe that was on the power play. The next one was on a breakaway. So, really? I'm like, I wouldn't be pulling my star goaltender who just signed an 8-year contract after 2 goals that were clearly not his fault. So yeah, a lot of people thought maybe he'll come back for the second period. You could tell Oettinger was confused and ticked off, to say the least. The look on his face on the bench afterwards was told the whole story here. In my opinion, it wasn't long after DeSmith goes in the net that the Oilers get their 3rd goal. They go up 3-1 or 3-0, then followed finally by a response from Dallas to make it 3-1. And then, of course, the Oilers just kept coming back and responding. They got it to 3-2, but then Connor McDavid scored a beautiful breakaway goal as well. Then it's 4-2. Dallas gets a soft one on Skinner in the 3rd period, made it 4-3. But then the Oilers respond again. A little bit of a lucky bounce on a goal from Evander Kane off a Stars defenseman in the net. And then they got the empty netter after to make it 6-3. But the whole thing with Oettinger was just weird, in my opinion. I wouldn't have pulled him when I did. I mean, I'm not an NHL head coach, so maybe Deboer knows better. But we know Deboer has a history with not handling goaltenders properly. You probably remember the whole sword going through Marc-Andre Fleury, being stabbed in the back, which was a picture his agent, Alan Walsh, had put out on social media. It's kind of, that was Deboer. That was the coach in Vegas at the time. So, he does have a history with goaltenders that's not real good, but the post-game comments to me were even worse. I mean, to me, it's not even so much that he pulled Oettinger, it's how it went about. Clearly, Oettinger had no idea. So the communication was bad. So that's on him. And then post-game, he says, yeah, it was a spark to team partially, but Oettinger's lost 6 of his last 7 games against the Oilers in the playoffs, and, status quo just wasn't good enough anymore. Oettinger might not have had the greatest series against Edmonton. Was he being outplayed by Stuart Skinner? Yeah. Do you really want to go down in an elimination game with a healthy starter on the bench and your backup on the ice with you? I don't know about that. I really don't know. I mean, to be honest, to me as a coach, I would want to go down with my best players. And Oettinger played a massive role in helping you get there. He outdueled Connor Hellebuyck, for example, in the previous round. You're probably not where you are because your team has had so much struggle scoring, but yet you're there. I don't know. And then to throw him under the bus with those comments afterwards, I just thought it was bad. You could tell that the lack of interaction between them, going in between periods, Deboer going off the bench to the dressing room, storming right past Otter with no words, no eye contact, no nothing. A lot of people wonder if Deboer will end up losing his job over that. I know he's been in Dallas for, I think, 3 years. They've been to conference final every time. They've lost every time, unfortunately. It's still a lot of success in the regular season and playoffs. Normally, you wouldn't think a coach would be in trouble. But then people are saying, well, what if Otter asked for a trade? Maybe he doesn't want to be around Deboer anymore. It's like, well, it's one incident. I don't know. Maybe we're all overreacting. But it just, regardless of what comes from it or not, it's going to impact the relationship. It just, to me, in my opinion, was not handled well at all. So the Stanley Cup Finals set. It'll get underway Wednesday, June 4th. Of course, the first 2 games will be in Edmonton, and then they will be given extra time in between each game for travel, and as the series goes along, there's some extra time off there as well to make sure they're at their absolute best. I believe if it goes 7 games, the latest it'll go is Friday, June 20th. There's only going to be one Saturday night game on the schedule, and that would be, I believe, game 4, or actually would be game 5. So, yeah. So, it's going to start on a Wednesday. We'll get a Wednesday and a Friday. That first weekend of the final, there'll be nothing. Then it goes Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and then afterwards on the following week for Game 7 if need be. So, we'll see what happens, but it should be interesting. I'll probably do a video later kind of setting up a preview and looking at the series, but let me know your thoughts on who do you think is going to win. Will it be any different this year? The Oilers touch the trophy for the conference final as the Campbell Bowl instead of not touching it like they did last year, so we'll see if that works out in their favor. Because it really probably doesn't make a difference, but there's a lot of superstition involved in sports, as we know. Lots of other news around the league. We found out, of course, in the wee hours, like late last night during the game, the Seattle Kraken hired a new head coach, and it's former Islanders bench boss and most recently a Leaf assistant. Lambert is the new head coach in Seattle. It's a little surprised, to be honest. Not so much that he got the job, but that they let go of Dan Bylsma after 1 season just to pivot to Lambert. A little surprised on how they went about their business there. It's their 3rd coach, and the team's only been around since 2021. So we'll see how that works out. I mean, I know he was, like I said, he's been around. He was a Barry Trotz disciple, learned from him for a long time. Pretty good on the defensive side of things, was a PK coach in Toronto. So we'll see what happens, and there is a dedicated video on the channel if you want to get a little bit more of an analysis. But Kraken have themselves a new head coach. We're down to Boston and Pittsburgh as the final teams that are looking for new coaches. We know they're on each of them. Pittsburgh, it still seems to be between Mitch Love and DJ Smith. And in Boston, there's lots of speculation around Jay Woodcroft. We've heard about Jay Leach. We've heard Marco Sturm, and depending on who you ask, they all got their opinion. The latest I seen a couple days ago from David Pagnotta was he believed that Woodcroft was having contract discussions, and if they could reach a contract agreement, that he was going to be the coach. But others have said Sturm, and nobody really can confirm they're right now because nothing's been announced here just yet. The Buffalo Sabres today hired Jarmo Kekalainen to be a senior advisor to GM Kevin Adams. We knew the Sabres have been in the market for a senior executive to work with Adams and to have somebody around with more managing experience. Well, Kekalainen certainly fits that bill. Was a longtime GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets, was an assistant GM before that. We knew he was trying to get back into the game in some capacity, and very well, to be honest, whenever the time comes for them to move on from Kevin Adams, if that happens in the next year or two, they've got their new GM right there. I would say that Jarmo is probably the GM in waiting, to be completely honest. So we'll see how things work out for him with Buffalo. The Islanders and Matthew Darche announced a couple of signings today, and it's believed that they were already worked out with the previous GM Lou Lamoriello. I'm pretty sure these were, from what we had heard and were rumored before. I don't think Darche really had to do anything with these ones, but they've re-signed Kyle Palmieri to a 2-year deal, $4.75 million, a full no trade in year 1, and a modified no trade with 16 teams in year number 2. Personally, I'm not really a fan of the veteran players that get the full no move clauses. Sometimes that can be a real handcuff, but most likely it shouldn't be an issue. Palmieri was, I think, 4th in goals scoring last year. on the Islanders are 4th in points. So, he was a player that's, obviously wants to be there, a local product that has had pretty good success. I kind of wondered if they may move on or not, but he clearly wants to stay, and Lou had worked that out. And then they also re-signed Adam Boqvist to a 1-year deal at $850,000. Now, there is some word as well, I believe it was Andy Strickland reporting that he's got word that Lou Lamoriello re-signed his assistant GMs, including his son, Chris Lamoriello, to contract extensions before he was ousted. So Darsh may be stuck with his AGMs for a little while. I don't really know if that's been fully verified, but there is other reports as well that I've seen from a few sources indicating that it is confirmed when Lou's contract does expire at the end of June, that he will have nothing to do with the Islanders. He's not going to be involved as an advisor or anything. So we'll see on that. Of course, we had word yesterday on a leak from a season ticket holder letter in Washington that this was going to be the final season of Alexander Ovechkin in the NHL. We know the team put out a statement saying it was a mistake and to basically disregard. Well, today there's reports that Ovechkin's wife completed an interview, which I believe might have been I'm not sure exactly who she was talking to, because I believe it was like a Russian news outlet, saying that Ovi is signed to a contract for the coming season, so he's going to play, and after that, they would be moving back to Moscow. So, again, another different report, different source of Ovechkin leaving the NHL after the coming year. So it does sure sound like, even though they have not confirmed it themselves, that this is going to be the farewell tour of Alexander Ovechkin for the coming year. It was Carolina Hurricanes locker cleanout day. A couple of quick notes from there. Dmitry Orlov, who's a pending unrestricted free agent, he spoke to the media and said as much as he's enjoyed his time in Carolina, he said there's been zero talks at this point to do a new contract and to remain with the team for next year moving forward. And to be honest, I don't think it's in Carolina's best interest. I know he played a lot of minutes. He seemed to be a defenseman they trusted a lot, but it just felt like he was on the ice for an awful lot of goals against him. It was just bad positioning and bad reads, and I don't know. I think they can do better personally for what he's getting paid. I'm not completely certain if he's in the NHL next year. To be honest, there was some reports that he as well may look to go to Russia to play. Possibly as early as next year, we'll have to see. Brent Burns, of course, the ageless wonder, still sounds like he wants to play. He said he's loved his time in Carolina, and if it worked out that he could do a new contract and stay, that he'd be quite open to that. Either way, regardless, it sure sounds like Brent Burns intends to play hockey next year, which is certainly interesting given his age, for sure. Signing in Philadelphia as well, they've re-signed Helge Grans to a 2-year contract valued at $787,500. It's a 2-year deal, and it's a 2-way deal in year 1 and a 1-way deal in the second year. And there's also news out of Philadelphia suggesting that longtime NHL player and coach Luke Richardson is being considered and might end up joining Rick Tocchet's staff as an assistant coach. He was looking around trying to, look into some of these vacant head coaching positions because he obviously has head coaching experience now, but nothing has worked out. He's looking for a role as an assistant coach right now and is in serious consideration for the opening on the Flyers bench. Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sons reporting that the Ottawa Senators and Claude Giroux's agent, Pat Brisson, the talks for a new contract are expected to heat up in the coming week. They've already held informal talks, but now they're expected to meet and gather face-to-face meetings to kind of try to hammer things out with the hope and expectation that just maybe they can work it out that by the end of next week, the deal is done and it's not too far into the offseason. I know the Sens really want to keep Giroux. Giroux's expressed interest in remaining. Everything that we hear, that it's mutually agreed upon it. They want it to work out. So when those things are the case, usually you can get through those conversations and those negotiations fairly quick. The belief is, from what Garriock's hearing around the league, is that it's very well going to be not guarantee. If they do a 1-year deal, if he'll agree to it, that they probably will do a lower salary to keep more cap space open, but build in some bonuses. Where he's over the age of 35, you can do different bonuses around games played and different milestones. So he may take an AAV as low as $3 million, but maybe he'll be able to earn as much as $5 million, for example. But upwards of $2 million, for example, could be in different bonuses. And if they have the cap space to cover it, that's great. If they don't, it can go on to next year. We know the cap is going up again next year, so it's not so much something to worry about. So clearly that's something to look at, although there is belief that there may be teams out there that would be willing to do a 2-year deal for him, and it's not saying that Ottawa wouldn't, but you can only do those bonuses on a 1-year contract. So, if you do a 2-year deal, it's going to be a higher AAV. So it just really boils down to what Claude Giroux himself is willing to do. Obviously, the Sens probably prefer a 1-year deal at his age. You've already seen a little bit of decline, still a very effective player. But, if he declines too much in the next year and you do a 2-year deal, you might regret it. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, he's got all the control being a pending unrestricted free agent. We also got word today that the Utah Mammoth have signed one of their prospects, and that's centerman Gabe Smith, who's actually a local product from my neck of the woods here in New Brunswick, down from St. Andrews, playing with the Moncton Wildcats right now in the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League in the Memorial Cup. Gabe has been a really good performer for the Moncton Wildcats, scored a big goal the other night. 6'5" left shot centerman who's not afraid to play physical and pretty good at both ends of the ice as well. Had a 20-goal season during the regular year, and then in the playoffs so far is averaging over just under a point per game at 22 points in 23 playoff games. So he's had a great year of development since he was drafted in the 4th round by Utah last year and has continued to improve. So he gets his 3-year entry-level contract here with the Utah Mammoth. Now, as I mentioned, lots of other speculation around the NHL. Let's start first with a UFA rumor, and then we'll get into pretty well everything else is trade related. But of course, John Shannon, longtime NHL. He's had a lot of different roles within the league. Very well connected source. He was saying on a recent podcast that he believes Sam Bennett, who is a pending unrestricted free agent, is only going to be playing in one of 2 places next year. I think he said this on a Vancouver-based podcast, if I'm not mistaken, because I've seen John Shannon interviews popping up a few different places lately. But I think, because the Canucks, there's lots of people in different fan bases trying to figure out if they can pencil in Sam Bennett under their rosters for next year. Obviously, the way he's played in the playoffs, he scored big goals. He's in your face. He can be dirty at times. He's a guy you certainly want on your side more than playing against them. So, lots of teams out there are definitely going to be interested. There's no doubt. But according to Shannon, he says that he either sees Sam Bennett staying in Florida or ending up going home to Toronto. Now, Bennett, of course, started with the Calgary Flames, was a high pick. Things didn't really work out too well for him there. I think a lot of it had to do with usage, where Brad Treliving was the general manager, traded him to Florida. They think they got a 2nd-round pick or something back. Nothing that really ever worked out for them per se, but Bennett's been a terrific fit in Florida. It certainly would be one of the players in the mix for the Conn Smythe Trophy this year. He's had a phenomenal playoff here yet again. But could he take a discount to stay in Florida? It's a real possibility with the no state tax situation. They can, have a bit of an advantage to get the lower salaries and still keep as much money in the player's pocket. But, we know with Sam Bennett that clearly he's happy there. Now, with the Florida situation with their salary cap, they have 3 big-name players that are UFAs. There's Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, and Brad Marchand. The feeling around that is that they're probably going to be able to keep 2 of them. The belief is that it would probably be Bennett and Ekblad being the longer time, members there, and that Marchand probably won't, unless he's willing to sign really cheap, probably doesn't stick around. Belief is that Marchand's looking for a raise on his last contract. That's not something Florida would be able to do unless, for example, Bennett doesn't come back. So that's the belief around Florida, but John Shannon's saying he thinks that Bennett only leaves if he has an offer to go to Toronto and go home. But other NHL insiders have said that they don't think Sam Bennett has any desire at all to play in Canada. So it's certainly a different, opinion, contrasting report. So we will see what happens. If Toronto ended up losing Mitch Marner to free agency and they do have more available cap space, should they go after Sam Bennett? It's a clear case of if you can't beat him, join him type of scenario. Yes, Bennett is a Toronto area player. We know that. I don't know. Let me know what you think. According to Shannon, it's a possibility if he doesn't stay in Florida. There's also a thing that he said that was interesting, was that there are members of the Panthers organization that are concerned that he may have already made up his mind and that he's leaning towards going to Toronto if they make him an offer. So again, we will see what happens. I mean, Bennett obviously knows the GM. The GM there knows Bennett, Brad Treliving, but it was at a different point in his career when he had him in Calgary. So we'll see what happens on that front. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Chris Johnston is reporting that the Montreal Canadiens are certainly open to using a few of their assets to make some moves this offseason. No surprise there. We know they're really looking for a number 2 centerman and possibly a top 4 defenseman. Of course, they're losing David Savard to retirement. As much as they have lots of young defensemen, there is a possibility that we see them attempt to bring in a more experienced D to level out the youth and experience on the back end. According to Chris Johnson, one of the top right shot defenseman prospects they have is Logan Mailloux, that they're open to moving Mailloux in either their first round picks, which are number 16 and 17th overall. They have their own pick at 17 and have the Calgary Flames pick at 16, back-to-back first rounders. So they are open to moving a combination of those assets to land one of those pieces that they're looking for. Now, this is the first time and it's not shocking to hear Mailloux's name, but it is the first time I think I've heard an insider directly name one of their prospects specifically to Mailloux that they're willing to move. So interesting to note for sure. Elliot Friedman on his latest podcast today talking about Mitch Marner did confirm that last year in the summer that the Vegas Golden Knights attempted to trade for Mitch. So we've talked lately about how Vegas may attempt to talk to Toronto about a sign and trade to bring Marner to Vegas, and if not, they will likely be in the mix as a free agent regardless. That they will definitely be one of the teams pitching Marner and trying to get him to go there if indeed he makes it to free agency, which is what we fully expect to happen at this point. And this will just confirm that they are definitely interested in this player. Elliot said that last year it started. Now, obviously, trade talks didn't get super deep and far. Essentially, Vegas was inquiring on Marner. Toronto, the main piece they wanted coming back was Shea Theodore. Vegas was not interested in doing that. And, things never really progressed. But they were definitely looking into trying to pry him out of Toronto. So I think that just kind of shows us that the interest is likely legit. It is also believed that the Los Angeles Kings are another team as well, according to Dave Pagnotta, that is very interested and expected to get into the Mitch Marner bidding as well, should he make it to free agency. So I think there's a pretty good chance Mitch leaving Toronto that he does end up somewhere west between Vegas, LA. We know, I think it's fair to say Utah will be in the mix. I think Carolina will be in the mix. Obviously, Carolina needs that star player. Lots of other teams out there too. It would be interesting to see what happens with Marner, but to have it verified by one of the top insiders that Vegas was trying to trade for him before, I think just definitely confirms his interest here now. Now, Frank Saravalli is also reporting on the Buffalo Sabres, where he's talked a lot about Buffalo lately. Not only is JJ Peterka the number 1 player on his trade bait board right now, but he says that there are teams that are preparing to offer sheet Peterka if he is not traded before July 1st. So certainly we know the Buffalo Sabres are in a situation where, they're kind of being, I think, somewhat pressured by the player to pull off a trade, but at the same time, they don't really want to do it. And if teams know he doesn't want to be there, then they're more likely to get an offer sheet signed, and they're willing to pay and give the compensation. So look for JJ Peterka to possibly be one of the top, offer sheet targets should something else not materialize by the time we get to July 1st. Also some talk around Buffalo maybe circling back on Elias Pettersson. Now, Dave Pagnotta in his latest report today wonders if the Sabres will circle back on him, because they did inquire and they were involved in trade talks before with the Vancouver Canucks about the centerman. The belief is across the NHL that the Vancouver Canucks are going to entertain trade calls up until his no-move clause kicks in. Obviously, the Sabres have pieces there that they would probably be interested in. When you're looking at players like Bo Byram, and Peterka, for example, and numerous others that could be available for trade, you have to think that there'd be some interesting pieces there that the Vancouver Canucks would be interested in picking up. I also kind of wonder, I know they just got him, but Josh Norris, if he's one of Quinn Hughes' best friends. We know that they want to keep Quinn Hughes. And we know Vancouver and Ottawa were having discussions about Norris before Norris ended up going to Buffalo. curious to see how things could play out there. Doesn't mean for sure he'd be involved, but obviously the Hughes connection could play a role. But Byram, Peterka, there's other pieces there that they would probably like as well. So we're curious to see if the Sabres do push, and there's confirmation from at least one insider that they're definitely going to entertain moving Pettersson. Saw an interview today with Trevor Linden on the Donnie and Daly show, talking with Don Taylor and Rick Dollywall about a few things, including Pettersson. He's got concerns over this player, and says sometimes he looks disengaged and uninterested. We've also seen reports that he doesn't get along well with the Sedin twins, who are basically running player development. Like, it just seems like an odd scenario and situation playing out there in Vancouver with Pettersson, and I really do think that the Canucks are, at the very least, going to entertain moving him, depending on what is offered up before his no-trade clause kicks in here after July the 1st. A couple other updates as well. The Vegas Golden Knights, according to Dave Pagnotta, are shopping defenseman Nick Hague. We know that they are in a very tight cap situation, and if they are going to make any attempt at bringing in another top player like a Mitch Marner, they're going to have to find ways to gain more flexibility. Nick Hague right now is a pending RFA left shot defenseman. It might not be somebody they can really bring back and re-sign. So he's definitely out there on the trade market and could be had for the right price. So keep an eye on that name. And Pagnotta is also reporting that that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be revisited, but during the season, the Edmonton Oilers had made calls and were talking to the Boston Bruins about goaltender Jeremy Swayman. Of course, we've seen Stuart Skinner's ups and downs throughout the entire year, and at one point, Stan Bowman was having conversations with Don Sweeney about the possibility of moving Swayman to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, doesn't mean for sure that they got super close or super deep. We just know the Oilers were looking into it, according to the reports here from Pagnotta. I can't help but wonder if maybe the Edmonton Oilers revisit this, even regardless if they win the Stanley Cup or not. And I know that even if Skinner gets the job done and they hoist the cup, you got to think that they still would be like, listen, we love this guy. He helped us get the cup, but he's still wildly inconsistent at times. Would they still consider trying to solidify it? Or with Skinner's contract, is there any possibility they bring in more of a like another guy to be a tandem with him? It'd be tough from a cap perspective, and I would imagine that Swayman's contract's probably too much for them both to be there. And if he wins the Stanley Cup, Stuart Skinner's probably not getting traded. But I'd be curious to see if they do revisit that at all. I think Jeremy Swayman is going to probably have a better year next year, to be honest, even if he stays in Boston. He had a really good showing at the World Championship. I think the whole contract thing threw his season off, got off the rails quickly, probably lost his confidence. I think he probably went to Worlds with that on his mind, and he certainly had a much better showing and helped the U.S. end a 92-year gold medal drought. So I fully suspect that Swayman is probably a lot less likely to be traded after all that. But I'd be curious where Edmonton was inquiring before, depending on how things go in the final, if they would look into it again or not. I'm going to say probably not, but you never know. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.